In this opening segment, we'll delve into the fascinating concept of alternate history, exploring its significance and impact on our understanding of historical events. Alternate history is a genre of fiction and speculative thought that examines how different outcomes in history could have reshaped our world. It offers a unique lens through which we can analyze pivotal moments and imagine the ripple effects of altered events. By doing so, we not only gain insight into the events themselves, but also the broader forces at play in shaping history. In this series, we will embark on a journey to explore an alternate scenario where Hitler and the Axis powers emerged victorious in World War II. First, let's set the stage by examining the historical context leading to this hypothetical outcome. World War II, a conflict that engulfed the globe from 1939 to 1945, was marked by key events and strategies that ultimately led to the defeat of the Axis powers. Adolf Hitler, the leader of Nazi Germany, orchestrated a series of aggressive military campaigns and strategic alliances that initially brought significant victories. The war began with Germany's invasion of Poland, followed by swift and brutal conquests across Europe, including the fall of France in 1940. Hitler's blitzkrieg tactics, characterized by rapid, overwhelming force, seemed unstoppable. However, several turning points shifted the momentum against the Axis. The Battle of Britain in 1940 marked the first major setback for Hitler, as the Royal Air Force successfully defended the United Kingdom against the Luftwaffe. The invasion of the Soviet Union in 1941, Operation Barbarossa, initially brought German forces deep into Soviet territory, but eventually stalled due to fierce resistance and harsh winter conditions. The entry of the United States into the war after the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in December 1941 further bolstered the Allies' strength. Key battles such as Stalingrad in 1942 to 1943 and the Allied invasion of Normandy D-Day in 1944 marked significant turning points, leading to the eventual collapse of the Axis powers. In our alternate history exploration, we'll imagine a world where these pivotal moments unfolded differently, allowing Hitler and the Axis powers to claim victory. We'll analyze the potential consequences of such a victory, considering the geopolitical, social, and cultural impacts on a global scale. How would the world map be redrawn? What ideologies and political structures would dominate? How would daily life and cultural norms evolve under Axis rule? This thought-provoking journey will not only entertain but also deepen our understanding of the delicate interplay of events that shape our world. Join us as we embark on this detailed and engaging exploration of an alternate history where the Axis powers triumphed in World War II. Chapter number 1: Hitler's strategic decisions. This chapter meticulously explores Adolf Hitler's strategic decisions, offering an in-depth analysis of his pre-war strategies, pivotal turning points, and potential alternate approaches that could have significantly altered World War II's trajectory. We start by examining Hitler's initial plans for Europe, which were rooted in his ideological vision of Lebensraum, or living space. His ambition to expand German territory and assert dominance over Europe was a driving force behind his early military strategies. Hitler's pre-war approach was characterized by a blend of diplomacy and aggression, epitomized by the Munich Agreement of 1938, which allowed Germany to annex the Sudetenland in Czechoslovakia, and the subsequent invasion of Poland in September 1939. The success of Blitzkrieg, or lightning war, became apparent with these early conquests. Blitzkrieg tactics involved rapid, coordinated assaults using a combination of tanks, mechanized infantry, and air support, designed to quickly overwhelm and bypass enemy defenses. This approach led to swift victories, including the fall of France in 1940, where German forces circumvented the heavily fortified Maginot Line and swiftly defeated the French forces through a combination of speed and surprise. However, the real turning point in Hitler's strategic decisions came with Operation Barbarossa, the invasion of the Soviet Union launched on June 22, 1941. Hitler's decision to invade the Soviet Union was driven by his ideological goal to eradicate communism, secure vast territories, and exploit the Soviet Union's resources. The initial phase of the operation saw rapid German advances and significant territorial gains, but the campaign faltered as the Soviets mounted a fierce resistance, bolstered by their vast manpower and resources. The harsh Russian winter, coupled with overstretched supply lines and the Soviet Union's determination, culminated in the German defeat at Stalingrad in February 1943, marking a significant turning point in the war. Examining alternate scenarios, we consider what might have transpired if Hitler had chosen different strategic paths. One alternative could be the decision not to invade the Soviet Union, allowing Germany to consolidate its gains in Western Europe and potentially fortify its defenses. Another scenario involves focusing on the Mediterranean theater, where a more concerted effort could have secured critical resources and strategically important territories. Additionally, strengthening alliances with Italy and Japan, or better resource management could have altered the war's dynamics. By exploring these alternate strategies, we gain a nuanced understanding of how different decisions might have impacted the war's outcome, highlighting the complexities of Hitler's strategic choices and their profound consequences on the course of World War II. Chapter number 2, the Axis Victory. In this chapter, we will explore the hypothetical scenario in which the Axis powers achieve victory in World War II by winning key battles and shifting the balance of power. This alternate history begins with the successful outcomes of critical battles such as Stalingrad, Alamein, and Normandy. Imagine the Battle of Stalingrad ending in a decisive German victory, allowing Nazi forces to secure the oil-rich Caucasus region and crippling the Soviet Union's ability to wage war. This victory would enable Germany to divert resources and reinforcements to other fronts, significantly altering the course of the war. In North Africa, the Battle of El Alamein sees Field Marshal Erwin Rommel's Afrika Korps defeating the British Eighth Army, leading to the Axis control of the Suez Canal and cutting off Allied access to Middle Eastern oil supplies. With these resources, the Axis powers strengthen their military capabilities and extend their influence across the Mediterranean and the Middle East. The successful invasion of Normandy, known as D-Day, is thwarted by fortified German defenses and superior intelligence, preventing the Allied forces from establishing a foothold in Western Europe. The failure of the Normandy invasion forces the Allies to reconsider their strategies and prolongs the war, allowing the Axis to consolidate their gains and fortify their positions. These military successes significantly shift the balance of power, enabling the Axis powers to exert greater control over Europe, North Africa, and parts of Asia. Politically, the victory of the Axis powers would bring profound changes in leadership and international relations. Hypothetical scenarios where Hitler survives the war or remains in power would shape the political landscape of the post-war world. In this alternate timeline, Hitler's continued leadership would reinforce the Nazi regime's totalitarian policies, leading to further persecution of minorities and suppression of dissent. The establishment of puppet governments in conquered territories would extend Nazi influence and control. Allied countries, faced with the reality of Axis dominance, would be forced to adapt their strategies and policies. The United States, isolated by the Axis's control over Europe and the Pacific, might focus on fortifying its defenses and developing new alliances in the Western Hemisphere. The Soviet Union, weakened by its defeat at Stalingrad, might enter into a reluctant truce with Nazi Germany, leading to a tense coexistence and a divided Europe. The British Empire, cut off from its colonies and resources, might negotiate a peace settlement with the Axis, leading to a significant decline in its global influence. The political repercussions of an Axis victory would also reshape international organizations and alliances. The League of Nations, already weakened by the war, would likely dissolve, giving way to new power structures dominated by the Axis powers and their allies. This chapter provides a detailed and engaging exploration of the potential military successes and political repercussions of an Axis victory in World War II. By examining these hypothetical scenarios, we gain a deeper understanding of the delicate interplay of events that shaped our world and the profound impact of alternate outcomes on global history. Join us as we continue to unravel the complexities of this alternate timeline, where the Axis powers emerged victorious and reshaped the course of history. Chapter number 3, Hitler's Vision for Europe. In this chapter, we embark on an in-depth examination of Adolf Hitler's grand vision for a new order in Europe, a sweeping transformation that would have reshaped the continent under Nazi control. Central to Hitler's plans was the establishment of the Greater German Reich, which aimed to impose a brutal racial hierarchy and territorial reorganization. This envisioned Reich would see the integration of conquered countries into a single, authoritarian empire dominated by Nazi ideologies. Racial policies would underpin this new order, with Aryans elevated as the superior race while Jews, Slavs, and other groups would be marginalized and persecuted. Hitler's vision entailed not just military conquest but also the systematic reordering of European societies through a combination of political domination, economic exploitation, and cultural suppression. Economically, the occupied territories would be plundered to benefit the German war effort and economy, leading to widespread exploitation of resources and labor. Socially, the Nazi regime would impose its ideologies on local populations, dismantling indigenous cultures and traditions in favor of a homogenized, German-centric society. This would involve severe repression, censorship, and the suppression of dissent. The chapter also explores how resistance movements across Europe might respond to the Axis victory, adapting their tactics to the new reality of Nazi occupation. These movements would face formidable challenges as they confronted an Axis regime bent on maintaining control through ruthless counterinsurgency measures. Internal dissent within Axis-occupied territories would require Hitler to employ a mix of force, propaganda, and political maneuvering to prevent uprisings and ensure stability. The nature of resistance and dissent would vary by region, with some areas experiencing intense conflict while others might be subdued more easily. Through this detailed exploration, we uncover the profound impact of Hitler's vision on European societies and the intricate dynamics of resistance under a victorious Axis regime. Chapter number 4, Global Implications. In exploring the global implications of an Axis victory in World War II, we delve into the extensive impact such a triumph would have on non-European territories, international relations, and the post-war world order. The Axis powers, comprising Nazi Germany, Imperial Japan, and Fascist Italy, would dramatically reshape Asia and Africa, fundamentally altering the geopolitical landscape. In Asia, Japan's expansionist policies under the Greater East Asia Co-Prosperity Sphere would consolidate its control over China, Korea, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific Islands, imposing a brutal military rule that would intensify the exploitation and repression seen during the Second Sino-Japanese War. The Japanese authorities would implement harsh occupation policies, extracting vital resources like minerals, oil, and agricultural products, while enforcing assimilation and suppressing local cultures. Education and media would be heavily censored to propagate Japanese imperial ideology. Similarly, in Southeast Asia, countries such as Indonesia, the Philippines, and Malaya would suffer severe economic exploitation under Japanese control, with the Japanese establishing resource extraction operations and agricultural production systems that benefited the Japanese war effort, displacing local populations and subjecting them to forced labor and harsh living conditions. In Africa, the Axis victory would lead to the reorganization of the continent into spheres of influence controlled by Germany and Italy. Germany would seek to expand its control southward from its existing foothold in North Africa, imposing a system of exploitation similar to other occupied territories, focusing on resource extraction and enforcing a racial hierarchy that would deeply affect indigenous populations. The Nazis would implement apartheid-like systems, disrupting traditional governance structures and economies. In Italian-occupied territories such as Libya and parts of East Africa, the fascist regime would integrate these areas into its colonial empire, enforcing its control through resource extraction and political dominance. On the international stage, neutral countries like Switzerland, Spain, Sweden, and Portugal would face increased pressure to align with Axis interests, navigating a complex diplomatic landscape shaped by Axis dominance. The Axis powers might employ a combination of economic incentives, political pressure, and diplomatic maneuvering to coerce these nations into cooperation or secure their passive acceptance of Axis-imposed conditions involving trade agreements, military alliances, or concessions on strategic resources. Remaining global powers, particularly the United States and the Soviet Union, would likely respond with strategic countermeasures to Axis dominance, with the US potentially shifting from isolationism to more active resistance, forming new alliances and engaging in covert operations to undermine Axis control. The Soviet Union, depending on its post-war position, could either continue conflict with the Axis or seek strategic rivalry with occasional cooperation. The global power dynamics would thus shift towards a new era of geopolitical tension, with Axis powers facing resistance from remaining and emerging powers. In the post-war world, the Axis powers would endeavor to establish or dominate new international organizations, reshaping global governance to reflect their ideologies and strategic interests. The League of Nations, if it continued, would be restructured or replaced by an Axis-controlled entity designed to enforce Nazi or fascist policies on an international scale, prioritizing Axis interests and implementing global norms and practices that include economic controls, military alliances, and suppression of dissent. This new international framework would create a global environment marked by authoritarian governance, racial hierarchies, and extensive control over international trade and politics, with the Axis powers using their dominance to shape global policies and maintain their grip on power, resulting in a rigid international order controlled by Axis-imposed rules and regulations. Through this detailed examination, we uncover the extensive ramifications of an Axis victory, illustrating the profound transformations in non-European territories, the redefinition of international relations, and the creation of a new post-war world order characterized by Axis hegemony. Chapter number 5, The Holocaust and Racial Policies. In a world where the Axis powers emerged victorious in World War II, the Holocaust's impact would have not only expanded but intensified, embedding itself deeply into the fabric of a global order dominated by Nazi ideologies. Under a victorious Axis, the Holocaust, initially targeted at Jews, would have broadened its scope to encompass a wider array of perceived enemies and undesirable populations, as outlined in Nazi racial policies. The regime's ideology, which promoted the racial superiority of the Aryan race and the inferiority of others, would necessitate an even more systematic and ruthless approach to genocide. The implementation of these racial policies would see the establishment of a far-reaching network of extermination camps, death squads, and oppressive state apparatus designed to enforce the Nazi vision of a racially pure world. This would not be confined to Europe. The genocidal ambitions would extend to Axis-occupied territories, including parts of Asia and Africa. Nazi racial doctrines, aiming to eliminate Jews, Romani people, disabled individuals, political dissidents, and other groups deemed inferior, would be imposed with unrelenting brutality. In regions such as Eastern Europe and the Soviet territories, which were already experiencing severe repression and mass killings, the scale of the Holocaust would have expanded, leading to the further systematic eradication of entire communities. The establishment of death camps and ghettos would proliferate, supported by a sophisticated bureaucratic machinery that facilitated the efficient and large-scale execution of these policies. The global impact of these racial policies would be catastrophic, as the Axis powers would enforce their ideologies in occupied territories, drastically altering societies through violent repression, forced labor, and cultural eradication. The Axis victory would mean that these policies become normalized and institutionalized, spreading a pervasive culture of hate and intolerance that would influence international norms and human rights standards. The world would witness not only the continuation but the escalation of genocides and human rights abuses, with Axis powers perpetuating a brutal regime that prioritizes racial purity and suppresses any form of dissent or opposition. This would extend to other genocidal activities, as the Axis powers, driven by their ideology, might implement further ethnic cleansings and human rights violations in various regions to consolidate their control and eliminate perceived threats. The Axis-dominated world would be characterized by a moral and ethical vacuum, where the Axis ideologies of racial superiority and totalitarianism dominate global policies and social structures. The implications of this would be profound, as the fundamental principles of human rights, equality, and justice would be undermined by a global order that enforces oppressive and discriminatory ideologies. The Axis victory would thus result in a world where the brutal legacy of the Holocaust is not just a historical event but a continuing reality, with severe consequences for global morality and human rights, reshaping the very essence of ethical and humanitarian norms on a worldwide scale. Chapter number 6: The Long-Term Legacy. In a world where the Axis powers achieved victory in World War II, the long-term legacy would profoundly reshape world history, leaving a lasting imprint on global memory, cultural narratives, and scientific progress. Axis victory would inevitably alter historical narratives, as the Axis powers, particularly Nazi Germany, would impose their own version of history, glorifying their ideologies and erasing or distorting the histories of conquered nations. This revised history would promote the Axis worldview, potentially presenting the Nazi regime as the rightful rulers and suppressing any records of resistance or dissent. The impact on global memory would be substantial, as Axis control would result in a centralized effort to control and manipulate public consciousness, ensuring that the Axis version of events becomes the dominant perspective. This would involve extensive censorship, propaganda, and the rewriting of textbooks and historical records to reflect the Axis's ideological stance. Cultural advancements under Axis rule would likely be constrained by the regime's authoritarian control, which would stifle intellectual freedom and artistic expression. Technological and scientific progress might face both advancements and regressions. On one hand, the Nazi regime's focus on military technology could drive innovation in areas such as rocketry and weaponry. On the other hand, the regime's oppressive policies, including the persecution of scientists and intellectuals, could hinder broader scientific and cultural development. The suppression of Jewish and other intellectual elites would result in a significant loss of talent and ideas that could have contributed to global advancements. In terms of counterfactual reflections, the global historical landscape would be rewritten dramatically. Literature, education, and historical records would be filtered through an Axis lens, with a focus on promoting their ideologies and suppressing alternative viewpoints. This revisionism would not only alter historical understanding but also influence the moral and ethical lessons derived from past events. The warnings and reflections from this alternate history scenario would underscore the dangers of unchecked totalitarianism and the profound consequences of a world shaped by oppressive ideologies. The moral lessons from such a world would highlight the importance of safeguarding human rights, maintaining democratic institutions, and ensuring that historical truths are preserved to prevent the repetition of past atrocities. In concluding our exploration of the alternate history, where the Axis powers emerged victorious in World War II, it is essential to encapsulate the significant scenarios and reflect on their broader implications for our understanding of history. Our detailed examination began with an analysis of the military successes of the Axis powers, specifically how victories in critical battles such as Stalingrad, Alamein, and Normandy would have profoundly altered the balance of power, leading to an Axis-dominated Europe. This shift would have resulted in significant political repercussions, including potential changes in Axis leadership and the post-war political landscape. The establishment of the Greater German Reich would have enforced radical racial policies and aggressive territorial claims across Europe, leading to severe economic exploitation and societal changes in Axis-occupied regions. Resistance movements would have had to adapt or form under overwhelming Axis control, with internal dissent met with brutal suppression. The global implications of an Axis victory would extend beyond Europe, reshaping geopolitics in Asia and Africa, with Japanese expansion and German influence altering global alliances and conflicts. Neutral countries would have faced complex relationships with the Axis, potentially leading to new conflicts or alliances, while the post-war world would witness a dramatic shift in global power dynamics, with Axis powers influencing international organizations and policies to reflect their ideologies. The Holocaust and racial policies under a victorious Axis would have expanded tragically, with systematic genocide and human rights violations extending globally, underscoring the moral and ethical implications of a world dominated by Axis ideologies. The long-term legacy would involve a profound reshaping of historical narratives, cultural, technological, and scientific advancements or regressions, and a rewritten global history filtered through an Axis perspective that glorifies their ideology while suppressing alternative viewpoints. This comprehensive examination encourages reflection on the importance of preserving historical truths and understanding the moral lessons from such alternate histories, highlighting the need for vigilance against totalitarian ideologies and the value of safeguarding human rights. By exploring these alternative paths, we gain deeper insights into the forces that shape our world and the critical importance of remembering and learning from the past, inviting viewers to consider how such scenarios impact our perception of historical events and engage in discussions about their implications for real-world history. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Hitler's strategic decisions and their impact on World War II. We've explored the critical choices that shaped the conflict and considered how alternate strategies might have altered history. If you found this analysis engaging and informative, make sure to subscribe to our channel for more in-depth explorations of pivotal historical moments and alternate history scenarios. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an update on our latest content. We value your feedback, so leave your thoughts and comments below. Let's continue the conversation and explore these fascinating topics together. Until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, and stay curious.